Hi there. My topic today is why habits form and how to build them. Now, I have an interest in this. I've developed it over the past few years. Prior to that, I was not a science person at all. But I'm really enjoying learning more about the brain. And I'm not going to get technical on you. No worries, not my jam. But I do want to share just a little bit about habits because it will make things much easier when we're talking about forming habits. So, the first thing to know is that the brain likes to save energy and effort, which is why our brain likes habits. And we can design functioning habits, or the brain will default to whatever's easiest, which unfortunately is often some kind of a non functioning habit. And the brain, it does not distinguish between good habits versus bad habits. So, we have to let it know more information. And often when we're talking about habit formation, we're really talking about replacing one habit for another one. It's really hard to get rid of habits, you're really replacing it. And forming habits is a skill that can be learned. So, in order to learn it, we need to know a little bit about the brain and a little bit about ourselves. And I'm going to tell you that all in just a few minutes. The first great piece of information is about neuroplasticity, and that is that the brain can change and grow at any age as long as we are doing things to nurture it. Very important. The second thing about the brain to know is that our rational brain is logical and it likes to plan, but it can get stuck in analysis paralysis. Who hadn't been there before? And the rational brain can run out of energy, but the good news is it could be recharged. Now, the emotional brain, it likes to keep working once it gets started, yet it can be really hard to get it started. You may have had that happen. And you also need to know that mental energy is crucial to habit formation. Now, there are lots of different models for habit formation, so I'm not going to review them. You may have heard of names like um, Clear and Culver and Duhigg and Fogg, and so lots of different people have some great information on it. But just to know that habit formation is a pattern, and for any particular habit, we have to figure out what pattern is happening or not happening. We have to make an intention to change, and then we have to tie it to something that really deeply matters to us. Now, in addition to knowing more about the brain, we have to know more about who we are. And I don't mean your name and occupation and where you live. I'm talking, first of all, about tendencies. And Gretchen Rubin has a great book. Actually, she has one book about tendencies and she has another book about habits. And she talks about 4 different tendencies, and you can actually take her free quiz on her website to find out which one fits you the best, or describes you, I should say, the best. But basically, she talks about the fact that these tendencies are really how we respond to inner and outer expectations, and that knowing that can make a humongous difference when we're trying to develop new habits. Another piece to the who you are is our individual nature. So, like, are you a morning person or an evening person? Do you like to start projects but maybe sort of abandon them halfway, or are you a person who finishes projects? Now, none of this is a good versus bad kind of thing. These are just what your nature is. Again, the knowledge can help you when you're trying to form habits. Another thing about the brain is your brain more neurotypical or is it neurodiverse? For example, ADHD or PTSD or traumatic brain injury. And the main reason to know this is that it can help you to identify useful strategies when you're, again, trying to develop new habits. Now, the next piece of this particular puzzle is where you are. And I don't mean, like you're in your dining room or you're in, Kansas. Um, I mean, sort of in the development of the habit. So, first of all, that awareness piece. How far along are you in understanding who you are and about your own particular brain? The next piece to that is how far along you are in the development of a specific habit. Have you mastered like the first little piece, or are you at the drawing board and need to start the first piece, or do you have sort of the second half, but it's hard to get to that second half of the habit? The other place is really a place, and that is the environment that you are trying to form the habit in, and or the environment that the habit is most easily formed in, because a lot of times our physical environment can make a big difference. Then the next piece to this puzzle is the what you want. Now remember, a habit is basically a permanent or a semi-permanent goal. And another thing of note is that intention for the habit is better than motivation, because if you wait for motivation, it may never come. So having the intention actually helps you get started. Habits need to be practical. Yeah, I know. Sometimes we tend to make them not as practical, and we need to start with the practical. We also have to be wary of our expectations. And by that, I mean that we need to keep them within the realm of possibility, or a stretch. You know, you have stretch goals, you can have stretch habits, but you don't want them to be unrealistic. So now the nuts and bolts of things. So 10 tips. But honestly, what I covered before is really important, because the tips don't necessarily work quite as well unless you actually know that previous information. So tip number one, start smaller than small and then celebrate the smallest progress. So, for example, maybe you want to have a habit of exercising in the morning. Maybe the smallest of small is that for a week or two, you get up and you put on your shorts or sweatpants or whatever is going to be on the bottom half of your body while you exercise. That could be the smallest of the small, and you get it done every day for a week. And then maybe the next week it is to put on the bottom half and the top half, the shirt, the jacket, the whatever. Smallest of the small, but that's where we have to start a lot of times. And that's the other thing to it. There are lots of ways to start, and you just have to pick one and begin. And like I referred to before, you have to start and then the motivation comes. Don't wait for the motivation, because a lot of times if we're waiting for motivation, we're going to be waiting a long time before that habit actually starts. And again, a minute ago, I referred to physical environment. So back to that exercise example. So maybe the shorts are in the middle of the floor on the path from your bed to the bathroom, and you put them on when you're in the bathroom. So that is much easier than having to actually get them out of the drawer at the time that that you need to put them on, or even worse, heaven forbid, you have to go searching for them or dig through a laundry basket. So third tip is about your language, your internal language, not your external language necessarily. So it's so much better to say things like, I want to, I would like to, or I choose to, versus I need to or I should. So back to the exercise example, I should exercise. Okay, how many of us have said that? Or I need to exercise. How about I want to exercise so that I can fit into my clothes better? Or I'd like to exercise so that I have better stamina and can walk a little further, or so that I can travel somewhere that I'm going to need to walk. So, again, just a little tweak in language can help. Fourth, link something to a current habit. This is also commonly called piggybacking. So this is, again, a language kind of thing as well. So after I X, then I Y. And this really uses preloaded decisions, which takes less brain energy because we're already doing things automatically. So we'll go back to that exercise example. If you automatically get out of bed and go to the bathroom first thing, then after I get out of bed, I will put on my exercise clothes. Okay, you're already getting out of bed. So put those on next. Again, physical environment, put them in the middle of the floor, wherever is going to be best for you. But tripping over it and doing it automatically going to make life a lot easier. You can also use, if you don't like the after I, X, and I, Y, then it can be an if then. So again, terminology, see what works. All right, now let's talk about willpower. Number 5. Willpower, willpower is really a battery, and that means that it can run out. So you really want to think about, when can I be working on a habit that my willpower is like at least half full, if not fuller. Okay, because if we're trying to do something when our willpower is low, and if we're also on the side happen to be waiting for the motivation, probably not going to happen. So number 6, we want to make it visible. And by that, I mean we need to actually have a visual way to monitor the habit that we're working on. And that's because our brain, very unreliable, because it is a positive illusion factory. And it wants to convince us that we are doing better than we actually are. So we might think, I won't say necessarily that we're going to think, oh, I exercised every day. We'll know that. But, we might think, oh, over the past month, I've exercised, 5 days each week. But if we go back and look at a calendar, whether physical or digital, and actually notice it, we might go, oh, yeah, I was better at like 3 to 4 days, not 5. So, but our brain tries to tell us something different. All right, number 7, accountability. Yes, both accountability and monitoring, very important. So accountability can be an app. It can be someone that you do something with, in this case, the exercise piece, but there are plenty of other habits we could talk about. It could be, just an accountability buddy that you talk with or text or whatever. They don't necessarily have to do whatever it is with you, especially because not everything is, applicable for someone else, joining you in whatever you're doing. So that accountability piece just makes it better. Sometimes, honestly, if there's nothing else to do, saying it out loud, like, again, exercise in the morning, I will work out first thing. Saying it out loud, again, makes you more accountable to yourself. Okay, number 8, and I'm sorry, you're not going to be happy with me, but it is what it is, and that is that we have to protect the habit for 2 months so that it becomes solid. Because despite what you've heard, because I know you have heard that developing a habit takes 21 days, it's a lie. It's a really, really big lie, actually. I'm not saying that there aren't any habits that can't develop in 21 days, but I'm saying it's a really slim possibility, because the average habit takes 66 days to form. And our brain operates on momentum. So if we persevere through this, and again, it can take more, it can take a little bit less. Some take 90 days, some take 55, whatever. But persevering through it, and then our brain goes, oh yeah, okay. So when I get up, I know that I go exercise, and I don't have a choice. And if I, again, the brain talking, not Janice talking, the brain goes, and I know that if I try to convince myself to go back to sleep, that I'll just need to exercise later in the day. And so I may as well get up and do it now again. Brain defaults wants what's easiest. It's easiest to do it when it's programmed to do it, rather than to have to go through all the decision making about when it's going to happen later in the day. The 9th habit is to limit the number of habits that you're working on at any given time. Okay. So like, eating right, exercising, some habit you need to do at work, something else, like doing all that at once, way too much. Even doing one of those things, like say the eating healthy, that unto itself, it's a big thing. So if we think of the smaller than the small, then that might be, eating breakfast because you haven't been eating breakfast. And that's just a piece of the overall habit of eating more healthily. And number 10 is, I really like this idea of foundation habits, and it makes total sense when it comes to the role of our brain and our body. Gretchen Rubin talks about foundation habits, and she lists them as eating, sleeping, and exercise. And when we get those habits in place, that it's much easier to to form other habits because our body is fueled and yada yada yada. Now I would actually add gratitude to that, and that's a whole different whole different topic I could cover. But just that the habit of gratitude helps in so many other areas, and again, it's something you can start small. So there you go. That is lots of information. And, I'm all about organizing and productivity, especially as it applies to life transitions. And so habits are a big piece of that because sometimes habits that are going really well in our regular life, when some kind of a, major life transition goes on, yeah, they just take a nosedive. So if you're needing any help in any of those areas, just reach out to me. As a reminder, although you may know me as owning Mind in Your Matters, which I still do, I'm now really, really concentrating on that life transitions organizing piece. Thanks for paying attention. I appreciate it. Talk to you later.